Joey Clark.
Welcome back. Now in 2024, there's going to be propaganda campaigns galore. I mean, that's pretty much what politics is, the sport of propaganda. And I'll tell you, folks, every presidential election cycle, it's tragic. Tragic to see so many ordinarily sane, lucid, everyday people succumb to the seductions of political propaganda, losing their wits in the process. It happens every 4 years. I've seen it now. I've seen it and I can't unsee it. So here's my advice, some lessons I've learned, but advice to the average bear as we enter this election year, especially those of you who don't normally pay attention to politics. Cherish your sanity. Cherish your sanity and your life outside of your political opinions. Try to enjoy Freak Show 2024 without taking it all in too seriously. So here are a few ways to help you detached. Lesson number 1 here, folks. What is seen and what is not seen? That's the core lesson of Henry Hazlitt's timeless Economics in One lesson. Hazlitt develops how this simple insight can be applied to understand many subtle aspects of economic life and government policy. And, similarly, the art of politics consists in seeing many chess moves ahead beyond the immediate, literal, or surface of the political scene. Seeing the unseen of politics is crucial to inoculating oneself against political propaganda and keeping one's wits when everyone else seems to have lost theirs. Now, lesson number 2. In politics, man must learn to rise above principle. We often say that here, right?
In politics, man must learn to rise above principle.
H.L. Mencken wrote that in 1940 in his essay, The Politician, wherein a politician running for president aims to, quote, save the country from all the stupendous frauds and false pretenses of his rival, only to find his, quote, blast of common sense got very little applause. Thus, he too starts making false promises to stay alive in the race. Politicians deserve a larger dose of skepticism than anyone, given their active quest for power and use manipulative techniques all the time to garner votes. Let's just put it straightforward. I'm sure they're good people. But if you wish to understand such political professionals, whether you're talking about the people actually with their name on the ballot or the strategists that help them run these races, if you want to understand such people, do not listen merely to the words they say, but rather look below the surface for the hard-boiled necessities they may face. If you were in their shoes, would you really behave any differently? Number 3, third lesson here. A truth that's told with bad intent beats all the lies you can invent. Apparently, that was George Orwell's favorite line of poetry from William Blake's Auguries of Innocence. To tell a truth with bad intent, as far as I'm concerned, is to be selective with the truth, bending the truth to fit one's own narrow interest. It is also to say something true about someone else while leaving the same truth about yourself unseen. The corporate press, who manage the national conversation, do this constantly and shamelessly. Though members of the prestige media rarely seek formal political power themselves, they nonetheless wield immense informal power over the populace and political process, thus deserving a potent dose of skepticism themselves. The media often tells the truth. The truth, when applicable, is the best propaganda after all, but they often do so with bad intent. Their job isn't to tell the truth always and forever, the truth and nothing but the truth. Their job is to curate and control a national narrative that is, at best, only partially true. Like the political class, the media purposefully manipulate others for their own selfish ends. Framing the Overton window, they, the media, the corporate press, greatly limit the range of allowable opinions while encouraging rabid debate within those artificially constructed limits. Lesson number 4. People bind themselves into political teams that share moral narratives. Jonathan Haidt writes, in The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion. Haidt goes on, our moral thinking is much more like a politician searching for votes than a scientist searching for truth. Now, aside from the manipulative psychopaths of politics and media, those they manipulate should be also taken with a grain of salt. The political opinions of the average man are rarely of his own creation and are often left as unexamined as his back hair. Everyday folks who mean well are, sadly, some of the most susceptible to spreading the propaganda of their manipulators, unwittingly, as though infected by some unseen, highly transmissible mind virus. Lesson number 5. Nowadays, public opinion is more smoothly and easily ventriloquized, writes Christopher Hitchens in his letters to a young contrarian. Indeed, polls are often more a means of shaping public opinion than of accurately reporting public opinion. Hitchens continues, quote, "Thus, to the consumer, the poll may seem like a mirror of existing opinion, but to the one who produces it, the poll is a swift photograph of the raw material to be worked upon. You may have noticed that popular opinion is not always and invariably cited by the elites, nor is it consistently tested. Who would pay? A properly sampled poll is quite an expensive business. Who would pay for such a thing? No, public opinion is not usually recycled until it has been treated. Only then are people informed whether or not their own opinion enjoys the certification of being the majority or approved one. Even general elections, which are supposed to involve voting and the active voice rather than the passive one, have been increasingly compromised by passive dress rehearsals. The polls condition the poll." Lesson number 6. Your vote is your voice. Your vote is your voice is one of the most insidious political cliches during elections. Your vote, if it means anything at all, is merely a negligible share in a political authority over which you have no practical control, nor any right not to consent to. Not voting, for instance, is still treated as consent. So vote as if your life depended on it, if that sort of thing turns you on, but never confuse your vote with your own unique God-given voice. I tremble to think there are people happy to see their voices boiled down to a ballot, their liberty reduced to mere ballast for yet another manipulative politician. Your vote doesn't guarantee your voice, it conscripts your voice without giving you a choice. Your vote only empowers you to the degree you're willing to deny your own voice and hitch a ride to some other guy's babble. More than any vote, the First Amendment remains the best legal guarantor of your voice. It recognizes that your voice isn't granted by the government nor the democratic hordes, but originates from nature, and nature's God. But folks, whenever any daft majority claims to be the collective master of your individual voice, just remember what Coriolanus said to the unruly mob who sought to force his exile. I banish you, and here remain with your uncertainty. Despising for you the city, thus I turn my back. There is a world elsewhere. And lesson number 7. The tyrant in you is the tyrant in me, is a line I have often repeated. Even the most righteous political campaign against tyranny runs the risk of becoming a movement fueled by resentment, hell-bent on destruction for destruction's sake. Indeed, if evil was only on the other side of the political divide, it would have been swept away from the earth long ago. Alas, evil is often found in the mirror. Empathy for another's worldview, even the supposed worst among us, is the only way to find light in the darkness of an otherwise blind march for political power and prestige. If you truly want to change someone's mind on a moral or political matter, you'll need to see things from that person's angle as well as your own, Jonathan Haidt writes. And if you do truly see it the other person's way, deeply and intuitively, you might even find your own mind opening in response. Empathy is an antidote to righteousness, although it's very difficult, especially during election year, to empathize across a moral divide. 217